Hi, this is Kyle Blakely with Mark Waller, and this is another episode of We Have Issues, the podcast about the things that are affecting us in Colorado, with a little bit more emphasis on the Pikes Peak region, since that's where we live. And that will actually be the focus of today's episode. We're going to be talking about one of our local ballot issues. But before that, Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Life is good on the Waller front. You know, things are happening here. Had some friends in from out of town over the weekend, and we had a chance to go to the Air Force Academy football game. I don't know if you had heard about that debacle.
Yeah, I saw the score. It seems like the Falcons are struggling a little bit this year. Seems like a little bit of an off year, down year for them, but it looked like it was at least a festive environment. And I've been to the Air Force Navy game before, and it's always fun at least.
Yeah, you know, I try to hit the inter-service game every year, whether it's Air Force, Army, Air Force, Navy, right? I try to go to that one every year. It's always a lot of fun. Best pageantry in football, going to the academy games, having the cadets march on the field, the Falcon fly at halftime, all that stuff. But this one was kind of special. I had a buddy of mine, actually, the guy that encouraged me to run for office the first time around, lives in Omaha, retired Navy officer, Annapolis grad. So we decided we were going to create this bet. And, you know, normally it's, hey, if they win, then you got to wear a jersey on a day of your choosing later on. But we don't, he lives in Omaha. I live here. We're not together all that often. So our bet was whoever scores, whoever's in the lead. So if Navy's in the lead, I, as an Air Force fan, have to wear a Navy shirt. If Air Force is in the lead, then he, as a Navy fan, has to wear an Air Force shirt, right? Thought it'd be fun swapping shirts back all day long. Nope. Guess what? I put a Navy shirt on the second I got there and didn't take it off the rest of the day. It was that bad of an experience.
Wow. Yeah, I saw your Facebook post and I was like, why is Mark wearing a Navy t-shirt?
You know, it's like, you know, getting a hot dog, right? And kind of walking through, and all these Navy fans are like high-fiving me. And the shirt, my buddy brought it for me to wear, but it says silent service on it, apparently about submarines, something I didn't know. And so all these like submarine Navy guys are trying to chat me up, and I have no idea like what I'm talking about. Like, well, why are
Nice.
you wearing the shirt?
Nice.
But here, I will tell you, there was an actual frustration. The only thing worse than the score of the game, I don't know who the Air Force Academy has doing traffic management, but it was beyond ridiculous. I mean, you could not have had bigger morons running a traffic management program than the people that were doing it for the Air Force Navy game. I live, Kyle, 10 minutes from the Air Force Academy.
Yep.
10 minutes. We left the house at 9 a.m. And because of the poor management of traffic on the Air Force Academy, we didn't actually park and get to our seats until 11 a.m., an hour after the game started.
Oh my God. Wow.
It was beyond ridiculous. The only other time I've experienced this kind of traffic going to an event at the Air Force Academy is when the National Hockey League did their Winter Classic, their outdoor game, and they did it at the Academy. And there was just a whole comedy of errors that contributed to that. And that only took 2 hours to get onto the Academy. I mean, this is ridiculous for an Academy football game, 37,000 people showing up, and it takes 2 hours to drive what normally without traffic takes 10 minutes. It was beyond ridiculous. You know, if only we had a governor that was centered on traffic and traffic management sort of issues.
Yes, transportation issues. I think that's going to be critical for our next governor to tackle that. So,
Absolutely.
well,
What did you do over the weekend?
I didn't do much of anything at all. Family time, got to see my granddaughter, but nothing overly productive. But this weekend, this Saturday night, my alma mater is playing the CU Buffs in Boulder. So I'm headed to that game, even though it's an 8:15 p.m. kickoff.
Oh, that's past your bedtime.
Oh, it's going to be so ugly because we're driving back. We're not spending the night. So,
And who's
uh,
your alma mater?
Kansas State.
They're
So,
they're decent this year, right?
oh yeah, they're ranked 18th in the country. I
And
haven't seen the betting line, but they might even be a slight favorite Saturday night. Um,
they
but
their odds are probably better than Kamala Harris's odds to win.
I don't know about that right now. It might not be. It might be close to an even betting line. I don't know, but should be entertaining. The Buffs haven't been in the Big 12 for 12 years, so I've had a huge gap of when I've been able to go see the game up there, and so really looking forward to it. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Kansas State fans travel really well, so there should be several thousand purple shirts in the stands. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, it'll be great. Well, hopefully you'll have a better experience than I had at Air Force last week. But it was, regardless of the outcome of the game, it was a ton of fun. Yeah, enjoyed getting to spend time with some friends I hadn't seen in a while. So we had a great time. How old's your granddaughter?
She'll be 4 in about a month.
Oh, who's she voting for in the election? Is she decided
Uh,
yet?
she has not decided yet, but gosh, I don't even know how her parents are voting, so I don't even know what kind of influence she's getting on the home front. So
She doesn't
that
have like a big giant blonde head comb over,
no,
curly
no,
dark hair, nothing like that, nothing to give it away.
but yeah, I'll have to start leaving some propaganda in her room now that
Now that we're getting down to it.
yeah, yeah.
Hey,
So,
my daughter's going to vote for the first time in a presidential election.
oh, nice.
21 years old.
Very cool. Yep. My very first presidential election, I voted for Reagan.
Holy
First,
shit, you're old.
Reagan's first term was the first
What,
time,
I was going to say the first term or second term.
first term. That was the first time I could vote in a presidential, and I haven't missed one since.
88 was my first one.
Oh, nice.
HW, sorry, HW. Over Michael Dukakis, right? I think that's who he
Yeah,
ran against in 1988.
yeah, yeah. After Dukakis's uh, wonderful TV ad where he's riding around in a tank.
Looking like a
And
moron.
yeah, yeah,
Looking like he was like dressed up to go trick or treating or something for Halloween.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
well, I think our guests are in the waiting room. One of them just disappeared, but I think we're going to go ahead and let him in here in a second. We're going to be talking about ballot issue 2C in Colorado Springs for this year. This is a renewal of a road maintenance tax that we've had for quite a while. But we're going to have Anthony Carlson, who I think is managing the campaign, and Corey Farkas, who is with the City of Colorado Springs Operations and Maintenance Division Manager. They're going to be on with us today to talk to us about the issue. So,
I love how, they initially run this thing. We only need this for 5 years. Only
yeah.
need it for 5 years. Of course, they're going to continue it.
Okay.
We'll
Here they
ask about
come.
that.
Yeah, here they come. Well, I think they're coming.
They're both there.
Hey, man.
What's going on, Anthony?
Good morning. How's it going?
Good. See
We're
ya.
doing well.
Corey,
All right, there we go. I was wondering,
nice to see
man,
you.
nobody's home.
Corey, I haven't seen you in a long time. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well, thanks. Life is
Excellent.
good.
Excellent.
Now that I'm not in elected office and having Colorado Springs City Council women take pictures through my windows, my life is great.
That's a bonus.
Yeah, it is a bonus.
Uh,
That's funny. They were taking pictures through your window.
Oh, it's ridiculous. We won't even get into the story. It was years ago.
You
Somebody
got a nice
that's not
Christmas
there
tree
any
though, Mark.
longer. What's that?
You had a nice Christmas tree though.
Somebody who remembers the story.
Well, that's funny
Yes,
because
nice Christmas tree.
kind of usually the other way around. Aren't you the one usually taking pictures through people's windows?
Listen, Kyle, I've never been convicted.
that's right.
Never been convicted.
Ah, well, guys, thanks for joining us today. I kind of, before you jumped on, I kind of mentioned who each one of you were, but obviously Anthony Carlson. Anthony, I think you're managing the 2C campaign this year. And then Corey, you're the operations and maintenance division manager for the city. So
Yep.
kind of oversee how the proceeds from 2C are used. So I guess to start with, I mean, we're all so close to it. We all just kind of assume everybody knows the history, but maybe start with a little bit of just the background on 2C and how it came to be and where we got to how we got to today.
Yeah, absolutely. So back in 2015, when Mayor Suthers first took office, infrastructure was one of his main campaign issues that he was really looking to address. So when he took office, he came to us and said, "Hey, I need a program built, and it needs to be to the tune of about $250 million, about $250 million over a 5-year period of time, and I need it in 6 weeks." And so we got to work and started utilizing the data that we had at the time and built the original 2C. He was able to get it put on the ballot in November of 15, and the citizens of Colorado Springs voted for the tax measure. At that time, it was a 5-year sunset from 2020 2016 to 2020 in the first round, and that was at a 0.62% tax rate, so 6.2 pennies on a $10 purchase. And it doesn't include groceries or medications on that. So that was really important. That was something that we heard from the voters that they didn't want to be taxed. And so we listened. It was voted for, and we had a great first 5 years. In 2019, we went back to the voters for what we call 2C2. And that was actually at a reduced tax rate of 0.57%, so 5.7 pennies on a $10 purchase, and that went from 2021 to 2025. So that will expire after next year. And now the second administration, Mayor Yemi's administration, that is following up on 2C has put it back on the ballot for this November for a third round. That'll be at the same 0.57% tax rate, so we're not increasing taxes at all, and this one will be for a 10-year sunset.
So,
And to provide some color onto that, prior to 2015, there was no dedicated funding for roads in Colorado Springs. So the roads repairs and improvements and all that came out of the city's general fund, which made it difficult for the city to have any type of substantial effort to maintain the infrastructure of our roads.
That's right. And
go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of add on to that because we get that question a lot, like, how did we get here, right? How did we need this? And back in 92, prior to 92, we had a dedicated half-cent sales tax that went to roadway maintenance. In 92, it was put on the ballot and voted out. So we lost our funding source from 92 to 05, we had nothing. And in 05, when PPRTA, the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority, came into play, we started getting some dedicated funding for maintenance, but we were already in such a bad spot, it wasn't enough.
How much money has 2C raised since its inception in 2015?
So through the first 8 years of the program, we're looking at about $475 million. And that's dollars that have been put back into our economy. So we have local contractors doing all of the work. 2C under the ballot language, we cannot grow government with it. So we don't have any, we do have city personnel that were already here and already established managing the program, but all of the administration, the inspection, and all of the concrete and paving work that's being done on the program is all done through local contractors. So the funding that we're paying out, the tax revenue that we get, that we're paying our contractors, those people live here, they play here, they eat here, right? They go to school here. All of their money is being spent right back into our economy. So the economic impact of 2C over the first 8 years, we're in year 9 now, but over the first 8 years was $475 million.
And all those dollars go back into road construction. They don't go into building fancy new buildings or buying computers or doing stuff like that. It all goes into roads and bridges.
Again, in the ballot language, we're very, very specific in the ballot language. It is a dedicated funding source. So 2C has its own account code. The funding cannot be used for anything else but roadway maintenance. And when I say roadway maintenance, that's within the right of way. So that's the pedestrian ramps, curb, gutter, sidewalk, and the roads, right? End to end. And it is dedicated for that only.
So
has road, go ahead. I'm sorry, Kyle.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, has road maintenance seen decreases elsewhere since the implementation of 2C? Like, is there any sort of general fund obligation for road maintenance?
Yes. The answer, well, let's see, we are utilizing general fund as well, right? So the short answer is yes. We have a maintenance of effort back in the original 2C, and again, it's in the ballot language. 2C is in addition to, not in lieu of, the spending that we were already spending out of the general fund. So the city auditors actually took a 3-year average of what we were spending out of the general fund and created our maintenance of effort and said, this is what you need to hit. And it's to the tune of about $2.7 million a year. I am happy to say that we've exceeded that maintenance of effort every year. And in fact, last year we exceeded it by over $1 million. And so every single year we've increased the spending out of the general fund throughout 2C and are putting more of that general fund money into the right of way, in addition to what we get for 2C.
So how is the 2C money used differently from PPRTA money?
So 2C has typically been dedicated to pre-overlay concrete and paving, right? And we do get a lot of questions like, well, why are you doing concrete? We want the roads paved. Very important note is that the concrete is extremely important because the federal government considers 2C to be a roadway alteration, not a maintenance function. Anytime we alter a roadway, it triggers ADA. We have to, by federal law, bring all the ADA ped ramps up to current standards. The other piece is the curb and gutter. So when we come into specifically into some of these older neighborhoods and we've got cracked curb and gutter in there, that curb and gutter is designed to convey stormwater. So water is going to be in that curb and gutter. If we've got cracked curb and gutter that will allow water infiltration underneath that roadway, then now we're going to get saturated subgrades, and the brand new road that we're putting in is going to fail prematurely. So we're really protecting the asset of the roadway that we're putting in by doing that curb and gutter prior to. So that's very important to get that pre-overlay concrete done with the paving. Our PPRTA dollars are now utilized mainly for our preventative maintenance. So not the concrete and paving. We do have some concrete programs under PPRTA, because they're very flexible. And when we have folks call in and say, hey, 2C's not coming down this road, but the pedestrian ramps need help. We've got some folks that are wheelchair bound and need help. Then we can use those PPRTA dollars to go out there and maintain that concrete. But really our chip seal, our slurry seal, our crack seal, all of those preventative maintenance measures that we need to keep our good roads good are what we're using our PPRTA dollars on now. So all of these roads that are being paved by 2C will eventually need a slurry seal or a chip seal, will most definitely need crack sealed, and we're able to utilize those PPRTA dollars to keep those good roads good.
Nice.
You have I know a fairly conservative Colorado Springs City Council, so I'm curious what the vote was by council to put this on the ballot. And obviously, there are two ways to put something on the ballot: citizen initiative or vote by the governing jurisdiction. In this case, it was the city council that voted to put this back on the ballot, right?
That's
Well,
right.
if you've been paying any attention, you'll know that it's been pretty hard to get a unanimous vote on anything in city council the past year and a half. And 2C was actually one of the few things that came in front of the council's desk over the past year and a half that actually received a 9-0 vote. So we had a unanimous decision from all 9 city councilors that maintaining and improving our roads was a critical enough initiative to pass it forward to the ballot.
Now, and I know, I'm sorry, Corey, real quick. I know some of them, say, hey, we're gonna vote to put this on the ballot to let the citizens decide, but I'm not, making any recommendation or endorsement of the issue itself. I'm just letting the citizens decide. Do you know, have any of them, specifically endorsed it or any opposed to it? I'm just kind of curious to read on that.
We haven't seen anybody, we've seen that in the past where somebody says we're going to let the voters decide, but, that's not an endorsement of my stance on this issue. We haven't seen that on this initiative. We haven't seen anybody going out and using their own newsletters or social media or their time with the press to, talk about, any displeasure with this. And so I have confidence that everybody understands that, road maintenance is critical to the success of our city. And that, being able to spend a little bit more in maintenance now will save us. I think the report that Corey's office puts out is it's in the hundreds of millions of what this will save us over 30 years.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people realize that infrastructure is nonpartisan, right? You had mentioned that we have a fairly conservative city council. Everybody drives on the roads, everybody. And so it's one of those issues that really, can kind of lend itself to being non-political.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember I was at the kickoff event that you guys did for the campaign, and I don't remember some of the specific numbers, but I know there was some information about like before 2C, how far behind we were on some of this maintenance, how much we've been able to do, but the incredible amount that's still out in front of us. Because sometimes, again, for people that might not be as involved or aware of issues in the city, they might think, well, hell, after 8 years, you guys got to have it all caught up.
Yeah.
And I know there's more new repairs needed every year, but what's kind of the long-term outlook on this?
That's right.
How much more do we have to do?
I could throw a ton of statistics at you, but we really try to put it in something that's really consumable for everybody, right? So we've got a graphic that shows that through the first 8 years of 2C, we paved 1,655 lane miles of road. And so that means we could build a 1-lane road from the Colorado Springs Airport to Athens, Georgia. Our infrastructure, which is the largest municipal infrastructure in the state of Colorado, the only entity that has a larger paved infrastructure than Colorado Springs is CDOT with their highway system. And so with the size of our infrastructure, we could build a 1-lane road from Colorado Springs Airport to Athens, Greece. So essentially what we have in front of us, we've done a lot of great work here to Athens, Georgia, but we still have from Athens, Georgia, all the way to Athens, Greece. So we've done almost 1,700 lane miles. We have about 5,000 lane miles left to go for our entire network. People don't quite realize that we cover over 200 square miles in this city, and you can compare that to Denver proper's 155.
Yeah, and provide some additional perspective to that. Prior to 2C, the city goes through and they grade every road in the city every couple of years. They send a car out and they have a, LiDAR and all sorts of other things on it. They give them real effective data on the quality of roads. Prior to 2C, less than a third of our roads were rated in poor condition or rated in good condition. Fast forward today, and we're about 50% of our roads are rated in good condition. And once 2C hopefully passes again here in a few weeks, by the end of this cycle of 2C, 2/3 of our roads will be rated in good condition. So 2C is directly responsible for those improvements. And some other claims that I think that your readers and your listeners would be interested in too is pothole complaints since the start of 2C have decreased by almost 35%. The one that shows up that we actually don't think about until we really start thinking about our roads critically is claims from damaged vehicles that people in Colorado Springs want the city to pay for as a result of hitting a pothole or something else that's wrong with our roads has decreased by 80%. And what
But
that
the
actually
city
means,
doesn't pay for those, do they?
what was that, Kyle?
The city doesn't pay for those. They just get the request to pay for it, right?
That's a whole nother podcast, Kyle.
Okay, never mind. Never mind.
Yeah. And so what you're saying is the quality of our roads are improving by virtue of those reductions in pothole complaints, but also it's saving folks dollars as they're not having to go and have costly repairs done to their vehicles as a result of damage that they've obtained through driving on our roads. And that can only continue to improve as we continue to be able to resurface and repave existing roads while being able to come back and provide that mandatory routine maintenance to roads that have been improved over the course of 2C already.
So, based on all of that discussion about potholes, it, just kind of, triggered a little inspiration in my brain here. So since Kyle and I have had you guys on to talk to our tens of listeners about pothole repairs and make your case about the passage of 2C, we get the potholes in front of our house fixed first, right? I mean, that's the way that works.
Yeah, unfortunately, not quite the case, but we do have a prioritization system with our potholes, and we're a decade ago when I took over the division, we used to just put all the pothole calls in order, in the order that they were called in. And the problem with that was, we might be out there fixing a pothole the size of a softball when there's a pothole at the bottom of the list that would eat a Volkswagen, right? And so we wanted to change how we structure everything. And so we try to ask quite a bit of information about the pothole. Is it dangerous? Is it in the wheel path? Is it on a busy road or is it on a residential? These types of questions, so we can properly prioritize that pothole and try to get those larger, more dangerous or costly potholes done first. And so really that's the way that those are prioritized.
Oh, well, I was just curious. I thought maybe Palmer Lake, because I actually don't live in the city of Colorado Springs. There's some sort of prioritization for Palmer Lake potholes in there somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, give Monument a call. They might come out and help you.
Actually, I was kind of hoping you guys might create a DIY pothole kit for homeowners that we could run to Home Depot and get, and just if there's one in front of our house, we could just knock it out for you.
That would be awesome, but I think with distracted driving and phones nowadays, the liability for having citizens in the right of way would be a little high.
I think it's a great idea, like Ron Swanson from Parks and Recreation, just going out and filling potholes.
Well, I mean, that is something that we talk about at the lunch table here quite often, is that we need to start creating a script. And I mean, Parks and Rec did so well, we can probably make a show called Public Works and, maybe
Public Works and Complaints.
Right?
Nice.
Absolutely. Hey, I have one last question. Go ahead, Kyle.
Oh, I was just going to ask Anthony, maybe give us a little bit of insight into the campaign, what you guys are focusing on, what you've been up to. Just
and what the polling data looks like. That's my question.
So I think probably the most interesting nugget from our polling data is when we're trying to structure these initiatives, we want to make sure we're giving the citizens of Colorado Springs something that they feel like they had a stake in helping define the direction of. And so what that looked like with this polling was mentioned earlier, the first two iterations of 2C had a 5-year sunset, which means that almost as soon as you're done getting that thing elected, within 2 years, there's already folks out there thinking about, well, it's time to put 2C back on the ballot. And that's because you need to get ahead of those sunsets, right? For some reason, if an initiative goes to the ballot and it fails, similarly to what happened with TOPS a couple of years ago, you want a buffer year to be able to go back and to recalibrate your proposal to voters to be able to better align with their values and their needs. We saw that play out, as I mentioned, with TOPS a couple of years ago, where the first iteration had tried to raise taxes a small portion. Voters said, no, we don't want to provide any additional funding to TOPS. And then they were able to come back a year later with a proposal that didn't raise taxes, and that was able to get through and be successful. So TOPS was able to extend. And so one of the interesting things that we tested this year is the previous 2 times that 2C has been on the ballot, it's passed with north of 60% of the vote. It's a popular program. People are excited that we have dedicated dollars that are actually out there making sure our roads are staying in good shape and continuing to advance the progress of good infrastructure in Colorado Springs. So in that polling, we gave voters a choice between a 5-year extension. Do you want us to come back and bug you again in 5 years on this thing? Or do you want to stretch it out? Or do you trust the program enough that you want to stretch it out and give us 10 years of 2C tax dollars? And the surprising thing is the 10-year extension was actually 10% more popular than the 5-year extension. And that's well outside the margin of error that you would see in a poll. So it's just not statistical noise. It was pretty much, determined by that the people of Colorado Springs wanted that 10-year extension. So the big news for this cycle is instead of going for that 5-year, voters, at least through our polling, are indicating they want 10 years, so we don't have to come back and bug them again in 5 years and ask them about our roads.
Nice.
Yeah. But outside of that, we're about to be starting our TV and digital marketing campaign. So you'll probably start seeing 2C ads inundating your TV and the places that you live online. The fun thing for this year is with everything going on in Colorado and a congressional election without an incumbent in it, you're actually seeing those media prices reflected, as Kyle, I'm sure you're seeing with the work that you guys do. The most interesting piece of this campaign cycle for me on the media front is last year when I was placing TV during our mayoral elections, I could buy into Jeopardy for $350 for a 30-second ad. And this is kind of some of how the soup is being made. This year, to buy that same 30-second slot on Jeopardy is costing me $3,500. And so that's the economics.
What is price gouging?
That's pretty much, but that's presidential election year politics economics for you.
Yeah.
And so it's been interesting figuring out how we make sure that every resident who's going to vote in Colorado Springs gets the information they need before they vote, because the margins for costs this year are exorbitantly more expensive than you're used to.
What didn't we ask?
Well, I had one other question I did want to ask, just out of curiosity, because of course, Mark's former state legislature or county commission opponent, when did you run against Doug Bruce?
100 years ago.
100 years ago.
2008 for the state legislature.
Nice. So I saw the other day where Bruce filed a complaint against the ballot language. Where is that?
Well, it's not a Colorado Springs tax question if Doug Bruce isn't trying to take you to court.
Exactly.
And so, this is something that he does pretty much every election cycle, finding something that he can complain about or try to file a lawsuit against the city with.
I've been sued by Doug Bruce before.
Yep. Welcome to the club, Mark. We're all part of the club.
Well, I was one of the first.
I am not. I don't believe I've ever been sued by Doug Bruce. So
you get a polo t-shirt and we have a secret meeting once a month, but
it's a polo shirt with like a grease stain on it, because that's not.
There's enough people in that group. It's probably hard to keep it secret.
Well, the disappointing part is allegedly 2C paved the road in front of his house last year. So apparently he got his share and he thinks it should be shut down now. But he has, filed a lawsuit against the city. We've been assured that it's nothing that he hasn't tried before and it isn't going to amount to anything. My perception of it is just his way of trying to gin up some media, because he did get a couple interviews out of it and gave him a platform to try to degrade the support for 2C. But from my perspective, it's just a typical Doug Bruce political antics when you get close to election day.
And that guy's lost all credibility over the years. I mean, I just don't think a lot of people listen to him anymore.
Yeah. One thing that I do think I'd want to put a plug in as we're wrapping up is just one of the unique things about Colorado Springs is it's actually really difficult to maintain roads here. It's due to a number of things, and Corey can probably expand on a little bit more, but especially like in those winter and spring months when we have those freezes and thaws that lead to potholes and whatnot. It makes it really difficult to be able to keep up with the quality of our roads. And the life before 2C, I think, is evidence of that. And the work that our contractors do locally here, the work that our city government does here locally, to be able to not just sustain our infrastructure, but improve it, to me is pretty incredible given the difficulty of the geography here, the difficulty of the weather here. And Corey, if I'm not wrong, we've actually had folks from other parts of the country come to Colorado Springs in the past to learn from our roads programs here, because the quality of work that our city does in implementing this program and improving our roads despite all the obstacles and the challenging environments that we face here.
That's right. That's right.
Corey, any final words from you?
No, I think we've talked about, we've hit quite a few points out here, and just getting, I appreciate being on here, because I think it's really important to be able to get the information out to folks, your tens of listeners, those tens of listeners will have 10 friends who have 10 friends who have 10 friends, right? And so getting that information and answering questions, because typically when folks call in to our division, I always joke that I have, I run the division that everybody loves to hate because of potholes and snow removal and everything that we do are pain points for people. But 9 times out of 10, when we get that phone call and have a 20-minute conversation with somebody, we get that aha moment, that understanding that folks say, I had no idea. Thank you for enlightening me on that. And so, podcasts just like this and being able to get that message out is really important. And I do appreciate the time today, guys.
Yeah, and listen, we have found that you're 4% more likely to listen to the podcast if you've actually been on it. So hopefully you'll listen to it and then help get the word out that way too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Well, thanks, guys. Really appreciate you coming on, and we're anxious. Well, I am a huge transportation issue person, so I'm voting for it, and I'm guessing there's probably not going to be a huge issue, but we'll be anxious to see here in a few weeks the turnout and hopefully keep this going.
Hey, I can unequivocally say I'm not voting for it, but I live in Palmer Lake.
Yeah, we'll make sure people understand Mark can't vote for it.
I can't vote for it. I can't vote for it.
There you go.
Can't vote for it. Vote early, vote often.
Yeah.
I don't want people taking pictures in my windows again.
There you go.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Take care. Good
Yeah,
seeing
have
you.
a great
Hey,
week.
everybody.
Thanks for hosting us.
Yep. See you guys. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good.
Hey, that was informative.
Yeah, I just know I like what they're doing. I don't always know a ton of the details, but again, but when you think about it too, I mean, it is kind of amazing with a 200 square mile city, just what it requires just to keep the roads in halfway decent shape. So, and not even still on some level playing catch up. But yeah, it's some of the statistics around it are always amazing to me.
Yeah, geographically, we have a huge city.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of one of the change, or one of the differences between us and maybe some of those other cities on the East Coast, right? I mean, or even on the West Coast. I think I read somewhere once that we take up the same land mass as San Diego. But San Diego's the population's much greater.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Wow. Speaking of land mass, I know this is not the topic for today, but I want to keep an eye on it and see if it's going to become an issue down the road. So the Amara annexation got declined down, the flagpole annexation down by Fountain, but there was another one presented to the city yesterday out by Schriever Air Force Base, a little smaller, 2,000 acres, but still a flagpole annexation that's going to be going through the system here. So it's going to be interesting to see what the reaction is to that one compared to Amara, but it might be something, and this is here in Colorado Springs for our listeners, but I think it might be something interesting to watch here over the next few months.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's different.
Yeah.
I don't. Unless somebody can make an argument, and I actually think in that circumstance, and this kind of brings me to my rant I'll talk about in just a few minutes, but I can see the one thing having an impact here. you have one developer that, by their own admission, it's on their website, they have 85% of the developable lots within the city of Colorado Springs. I think by definition, that's a monopoly. And we have an attorney general in the state of Colorado that's an expert on antitrust laws. And I think, they keep holding on to this. We have all the developable lots. I can see some antitrust litigation coming. And I'll tell you, seems to me, once that lawsuit gets filed and lots of people get subpoenaed, that's something that, the developer that has 85% of the developable lots isn't going to want to have to deal with, because there are going to be a lot of city council members, former city council members, mayors, former mayors that are going to get subpoenaed in that process to talk about all the shenanigans that have gone on to enable that developer to have 85% of the developable lots. So that might be something that encourages them to step back and allow this annexation to happen.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. So what is the rant today? What's pissing you off?
Yeah, here's I've kind of got the the little flyer from the El Paso County Clerk and Recorder that talks about what's going on and what's going to be on the ballot. And I look at some of these jurisdictions. Tusique, I guess, could be an example of this, but that's just a renewal of a tax that's already in place. But you have some of these other smaller jurisdictions like Monument putting these measures on the ballot to increase taxes, to actually create new taxes. And, I've watched this, I live pretty close to Monument. I've watched this Monument Town Council say no to every other opportunity to increase revenue in the city through new development and annexations. So they've pretty much gone anti-development. I think you make an argument that Colorado Springs, to a degree, has kind of gone anti-development with the denial of the Amara annexation. Fountain is kind of anti-development. And so, you got to understand, either you're growing or you're dying, right? And as these cities have demands on them in the state of Colorado to grow, our population's growing, and we should all recognize that at some point your kids grow up and they move out of the house. We need to have houses for them to live in. We already have this affordable housing crisis in the state of Colorado. Now here you have, these local jurisdictions kind of putting these tax increases on the ballot because they won't engage in smart and responsible development, because of the NIMBYism, and they become anti-development. And it seems ridiculous to me, and also incredibly tone deaf for these smaller jurisdictions to say, geez, we realize that your property taxes have just increased because the valuations for houses have gone up pretty significantly, but we're also going to ask more by putting tax increases on the ballot. Here's where we should be, Kyle. We should be engaging in smart and responsible development that not only pays for itself, but also adds other dollars to the bottom line and revenues. As a county commissioner, I learned a couple of things about folks that live in El Paso County, and I think this is true across the state and in these other municipal jurisdictions. And that is two things. Everybody wants to live absolutely free of government interference in their lives, but they're good if you look in on their neighbor. I'm all about private property rights as long as it's my private property right. But I want him to do something else with his property, and he doesn't have the same right that I do. That's one. And two, everybody here wants their house to be the last one built. There are very few people that they're actually native to this area and this region. That means their house got built at some point when they moved in here in order for them to live in it. We need to have more responsible growth in our communities moving forward. And I don't think it's enough to just say we're going to be anti-development. We're seeing it all the time. We've seen it down in Fountain. That's part of why Amara ended up trying to get into the city of Colorado Springs because Fountain effectively said no. We're seeing it in Monument right now. I think that jurisdiction can actually at some point end up in bankruptcy, having a hard time paying the bills.
Wow.
And we see this sort of irresponsible governance across the region, and it's just not sustainable.
Well, that I completely agree with you. I saw something the other day where Colorado in general, out of all 50 states, is like fourth in housing prices, fourth highest. California, Massachusetts, and maybe one other state ahead of us.
New York, probably.
Actually, New York's was lower, shockingly, but it's got to be everything outside of New York City must be under $100,000 because otherwise you would think New York would have been way, way up there. But no, I completely agree with you. There has to be something done because, I mean, we've seen for 35 years in Boulder what happened when they shut off development and housing prices. It's almost impossible to buy into that city anymore. And that's just going to be happening more and more. But the good news is our guest next week is going to be Colorado Springs Mayor Yemi Mobolade. And so maybe we can get into some of this discussion with him too.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. You're a teacher, you're a firefighter, you're a cop, you're, somebody that works to make our community better. You can't afford to buy a house here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something wrong there. There's a disconnect there that needs to be resolved. And you have jurisdictions like Monument saying, the way we're going to solve this? Charge you more.
Yeah. And definitely no apartments.
Yeah, right. Let's not put condos in, something that's actually going to make housing more affordable. Only 1 acre lots with $1 million houses, because everybody can afford that, right?
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that does it for another episode of We Have Issues. I'm Kyle Blakely with Mark Waller. Please remember to follow us and subscribe on YouTube or subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And like I said, we'll see you next week when we have Colorado Springs Mayor Yemi Mobolade on. And Mark,
one other thing. What should people also do on election night?
Yes, on election night, tune in and watch us on a live episode. We'll be doing live coverage of election results in partnership with the Colorado Springs Gazette, broadcasting live from the Gazette newsroom.
We will have informative, if not at least entertaining, analysis of the elections in Colorado and across the nation. It'll be interesting, federally. The Senate's probably going to flip, the House is probably going to flip, and who knows what's going to happen in the White House. It's just going to flip out.
Yeah, and we're going to have obviously folks from the Gazette on with us, and then other guests throughout the evening. So it really should be kind of a one-stop place to get election coverage, national, Colorado, and local.
Well, we have 2 guests confirmed so far. Liberal Lois is coming back, and she's going to talk about some of the ballot initiatives and the state of races in Colorado. Always love hearing her perspective, as wrong as it probably is most of the time, but I love hearing it. Yep. And Rachel's coming back to talk with us again. Since we didn't get her face on the podcast, we have to have her back on so actually people can see her smiling face on the podcast. And it was obviously clear that she is smarter than we are. So the fact that we've actually convinced her to come back on says something about our ability to persuade people. Absolutely. Or maybe lack of ability, and she needs to come in and clean up the mess. That's probably more it, right? Yeah, that's probably more like it. But so we'll be back next week. Take it easy.